But obviously, in the previous interview, you said about working with people like the meme, the myth, Danica Patrick.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can talk about Danica, we can talk about Jamie, whatever, whatever works for you. Ask away.
What is it like to work with the meme, the myth? The
Yeah, so Danica, there's no two, there's no two ways about it. Danica is a real character, and for me, I really respect the fact that she's done it her way. Obviously, when we were teammates, when we were racing together, was the day and age of no social media. So, that side of things, it was very, very different. And some of the things that she posts or her views and that kind of stuff weren't sort of readily available and or open to us, even though we got to know her really well. Danica was pioneering a career in an environment where she definitely was just the only female. And that came with a lot of scrutiny, a lot of pressure. Um, and, at the time, I was focused on my journey. So you're not really too empathetic to what she's doing or the challenges that she was facing. But certainly, knowing what I know now and looking back, it made her not made her behave in a certain way, but she had to be resilient. She had to be tough. She had to be, she was very, for want of a better word, feisty in terms of you didn't ever get one over on Danica. She was very, very strong minded and not scared to say her opinion. And she was fighting for that respect and that space at the table. And I don't think she's ever lost that, if that makes sense, because she had to fight so hard. On top of that, she was actually really fast. I mean, genuinely really bloody good, excuse my language. Danica was quick out of the box wherever we went. And, you know, on her day, you just you couldn't beat her. And look at where she finished. People don't realize that she finished second in the festival on merit. She she beat some big names in one of the biggest events in Europe at that time because everyone was in and around the Formula Ford, Vauxhall Junior setup. So she was really good friends with JB at that time. Jensen went on to do Formula Three, and Danica eventually went back to America and did some. She's a race winner in IndyCar on an oval. That's not easy. We watch IndyCar now. Okay, Pelot wins races for fun, but everyone else. It's hard to win an IndyCar race, and it's hard to win on an oval. So, yeah, I mean, Danica with social media and everything else now, she's very much doing it her way. But back in the day, it was impressive what she did, and I did have a huge amount of respect for the fact that she fought hard to be at the table and make a name for herself when really society shouldn't have made her fight that hard. We should have been much more diverse and much more open-minded much earlier on.
Plus, from what I saw, she was the first female to lead 13 laps as well
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
at
yeah,
the 500.
yeah. I mean, listen, Danica is far. I mean, unequivocally the fastest female racing driver I've seen in my generation. Definitely, in terms of natural speed.
And you don't want to mess with
She's
her.
really small as well. She used to have wooden blocks on her pedals in the because you couldn't change the car and she couldn't be any further forward with the seat because of the way the roll hoop was and the head protection and that kind of stuff. and the pedals wouldn't come any further forward. They couldn't be, you know, past the, that had to be a certain distance from the front axle or whatever it was. Anyway, scrutineer talk here. But so she had these massive wooden blocks on the pedals in order to get her to fit in the car. But she did it. She didn't bother her.
She's also a bit feisty because I've seen videos of her going to other drivers in NASCAR and telling them what's on her mind.
Yeah, you didn't want to crash with Danica, and you didn't want to get in her way on a test day or qualifying session, or anything like that. Yeah. I remember once at Castle Coombe, she knocked down all the barriers at the chicane so we could have a faster line through the chicane, cut lap time, and the the circuit were getting really annoyed that we kept on doing that. And then it was sort of last warning territory. And anyway, Danica went straight out and mowed them down. And then they came down into the pit lane and they were like, who was that? And everyone obviously pointed at Danica, and they sort of walked over there as to tell her off. And we all kind of looked at each other thinking this isn't going to go well. And of course, she told them exactly what she thought of their rules. and she wasn't about to follow them.
Surprised
Yeah.
you all didn't just look quick going, yep, wasn't us.
We all hid behind Danica, who was much smaller than us. Yeah. But Danica's Danica, and there'll only ever be one Danica.
Explain who else you have done bits with women in the sport as well.
Yeah, I've worked with Jamie Chadwick, who's another name that fans will know really, really well, who's a driver who is very successful in her own right. And actually, is another driver who had to work a bit harder than she needed to in terms of being at the table and proving her worth. And it was very very evident very early on that she felt that pressure, and it's very, very hard when you're working with someone who is under that amount of scrutiny and feels that amount of pressure, because human beings don't function well in that sort of fear of failure space. So when you're going out all the time and people are commenting about your pace, about this, but none of the other drivers had that. And she had a huge media following around her as well. And when you're trying to find your way in terms of growing up as a young woman, to know what works for you, understand yourself, that kind of thing, when you're trying to fit in as well and you've got all of this pressure around you, was a really hard time for her. And I think she did really, really well being able to manage that pressure and get to where she is now. She hasn't got huge amounts of backing. She's got enough, but that's stopped her going to do Formula 3 or Formula 2 or whatever it is. But she hasn't needed to. I'd have loved to have seen her stay in America, but she's back here now. I think there was a real opportunity for her in America, and I think IndyCar would have really rolled out the red carpet for her in terms of she's just a lovely person who does it her way and does it with a huge amount of grace as well. So she's always going to be successful and popular in the environments that she operates within. When you meet her, she's so articulate and so polite and well-mannered and just a kind, well-rounded individual. So IndyCar would have loved her, but it's about momentum, finding the right partners, and opportunity, and it just wasn't there. IndyCar, it's expensive. We've got plenty of drivers on the outside looking in at the moment, and so for her to find a home here and now focus her attentions on that whole Le Mans project, winning Le Mans. I mean, how awesome would that be? I think, sports cars and the manufacturers and, the sort of media pathway that she's treading now around that narrative is equally as strong. So it's great to see her in a car that has experienced teammates, that's really quick. They've already won 2 races, so head to Le Mans with a really good chance of winning that as well.
That's all I have.
Yeah, no, I think I've enjoyed that conversation. It's nice to talk about Danica and Jamie because it in today's day and age with social media, I think, and that's one point that I didn't make with Jamie. Danica didn't have social media back then when she was developing and when she was finding her way. And I think, Jamie, for young people alone, social media adds a dynamic that is quite tricky to navigate at times. And social media can be a really cruel and difficult space. And then when you're just trying to find your way and do the one thing that you love, and people are being so mean about it, it's it's really hard. And she navigated that really, really well.